Hi guys, this is an example of finding slope when you're using a table, right? So we're going to look at our table. We have our x values and our y values. So I need to pick probably two sets of numbers that I can use in order to find slope. And let's go ahead and do this one as our first pair. And I think for you guys, I'm going to have us do this one, right? So it doesn't matter as long as you've got an x1 and a y1. So I'm going to look at my formula first of all for slope. I'm going to write it down, my y2 minus y1 over my x2 minus my x1. All right, hopefully y'all can see that all right. Let's fix my 2 here. All right, it looks a little better. All right, so y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, because remember, our y's are always in the numerator, meaning they're on the top. Our x's are always in the denominator, meaning they're on the bottom. So I'm going to take my numbers. If you need to write your table, if you need to write them like this, because it's easier for you to understand it and see it, that's fine. That's a y. All right, so I can go ahead and put -2, -8, and my next pair of numbers that I'm going to look at is that 3 and that 12. So I can use it that way if I want to. This would be my y1, this would be my y2, this would be my x1, this would be my x2. Right, so I can go over to my formula, and I'm going to plug those in. So my y2 was 12. And I'm going to subtract a -8. Right, so I want to make sure I get that negative number in there. And for my bottom, the denominator, I'm going to put my 3, because that's my x2, minus a -2. So here we have some examples of subtracting a negative number. Right, so we need to remember what our rules are, or make sure we put it in the calculator correctly. Because I'm going to have to do a 12 minus a -8. So I need to make sure that when I'm doing it in my calculator, I put a -8. If you just put 12 minus 8, you will not get the correct number. You've got to do 12 minus a -8. I'm just going to go with our add a line, change the sign. You see how that changes to 12 plus 8. So I've got to add 12 plus 8. And when I do that, I get 20. All right. So then I'm going to look at my denominator. My 3 minus a -2. Same thing. Got to put it in the calculator correctly, or I can do add a line, change the sign. And now I've just got 3 plus 2. So now I've got 5. Now this answer right here is a division problem. So I can either simplify it, or I can go ahead and divide it out. So if it's me, I'm going to take that 20, I'm going to divide it by that 5, and I'm going to get 4. So our slope, remember, the 1 underneath the 4 is always understood. So our slope would be 4 over 1. So basically our slope is 4. We don't always have to put the 1 underneath it because it's a whole number. So if the slope is 4, that works for that. What I also want to show you is when you're doing this, you can also ask yourself, what are the easiest numbers for me to work with? And so what I'm going to show you is if I'm looking at this and I have a hard time with negative numbers, and I notice that there's a pair of numbers that are not negatives, then I might want to use those 2 that I circled right there. So if I use these, then my x and my y becomes 3 and 12 and 4 and 16. So now I can work it out using the same formula, my y2 minus y1. So my y2 is right here, my y1 is right here. So I would put 16 minus 12. And then for my x's on the bottom, here's my x2, here's my x1. I'm going to have 4 minus 3. So this is going to keep me from having to reduce it when I'm using these numbers. 16, if I take away 12 from 16, I end up with 4. If I take away 3 from 4, 4 minus 3 is 1. So you see how you get the same slope? Either way, even though we use numbers in that table, you're going to get the same thing no matter which sets of numbers that you start with. So I would always choose the numbers that seem easiest for me to work with, and that's going to make it a little bit easier for you to solve it. All right, guys, thanks for listening.